Do you take care of your shit? Or do you flush it out of sight, out of mind? Do you take responsibility each time you go to the toilet to urinate and defecate? Ask the question, where is it going? Who suffers the consequences of it? Is it being well used, or is it producing a lot of waste in a very wasteful society? I'd like to invite you to consider options to the flush toilet, where each time we pull the flush, we stop thinking about where our feces and urine are traveling to, and move towards a form of technology that is simple, cost-effective, efficient, ecological, and allows us to maintain responsibility and autonomy within every household. Instead of making waste, can we make solid and liquid gold? The flush toilet was designed and invented, some say, by a man called Mr. Thomas Crapper for the King of England, because, like royalty, he did not want to deal with his urine and with his feces. So he wanted them taken out of sight, out of mind. As people became developed, they wanted the same for ordinary people. This became a notion of democracy. Millions and billions of us are learning to become irresponsible or simply thoughtless. Most of us have no knowledge of the consequences of having our feces and our urine transported for miles in drinkable potable water to sewage treatment plants, or in other cases to rivers and oceans where they are dumped across the world. Many people across the world, millions, have started to look for alternative technologies, and one of these alternative technologies is called the dry or urine separating ecological toilet. In this little bathroom, we have 3 examples of urine separating devices. The first one is Western style, and in this, the urine goes in through that hole, whereas the feces drop into that chamber and then are covered over by a mixture of soil and lime to keep out flies and to cover the feces so that they dry up. Lime has a drying effect. If all you want to do is urinate, you urinate in there into that hole, and then it's washed away with a tiny cup of water. So this is an Indian style urine separating toilet, in which, following centuries of Indian wisdom, one is required to squat, whether it is to urinate or to defecate. And through squatting, you can make sure that urine goes into this hole and the feces go into that hole. And then the procedure afterwards is the same. Soil and lime for covering the feces, for drying them out, preventing flies. And this is designed especially for men who've only come into the toilet to urinate. This is what the whole facility looks like from the outside. It is into this chamber that the feces fall and then are covered over with soil and lime, or cal as it's called in Mexico. And this is the container into which the urine is once a day. The urine is diluted with 10 parts of water and immediately given to the flowers and the food that you're growing around your house. And so instead of it going to a treatment plant, transported in drinkable water, it stays in your house and is immediately put into use, and that is why it is called liquid gold. Whereas the solid gold accumulating here needs a procedure of 6 months of composting in a variety of different ways in order to become solid gold rather than a product of waste that needs to be treated. When we human beings are part of the web of life, we do not produce waste. We produce liquid gold and solid gold. In other words, all the plants, vegetables, vines, and trees that give us fruits and flowers and food, we nourish them right back. What we take into our mouths, we give back through our feces and urine. And so rather than contaminate farmers' fields or contaminate the oceans, contaminate our water system, our water basin, we nourish life around us. When we become consumers of the flush toilet, it is inevitable that we do not see the consequences of our actions. We do not understand the amount of water needed for transportation or the consequences of treatment plants, and we end up producing toxins that go into the web of life and destroy it. In the same way that the church and state separation has allowed human beings to be freer, more autonomous, the separation of shit and state is essential. When we de-link our intestinal tract from the machinery of the state or the machinery of the corporation, we start to enjoy the autonomy necessary for taking personal responsibility. Personal responsibility for our feces and urine is not required by the flush toilet. Thousands of communities across the world that are not constrained, limited, and imposed upon by state, municipal, and national regulatory conventions are enjoying the freedom of building ecological dry toilets. The beauty of this technology, the urine separating ecological toilet, is that I know exactly where my feces and my urine travel to. They stay right here in these precincts, being used later on for the gardens outside. Do you know where your shit goes to? Do you know how many miles it travels? Do you know how many gallons of water it is transported in? And do you know all the expenses involved in its treatment? And where those treated waters are then dispensed to kill ocean life, river life, water life, and land life? And instead of embracing the out of sight, out of mind philosophy, to take on an alternative relationship with your shit.